Let's go ahead and get started. My name is Gina Waldhorn. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Sports Innovation Lab. And the Fan Project Live Chat series is a new series that we launched during the month of March that's focused on discussing the real challenges and untapped business potential of women's sports, featuring guests from Fan Project partner organizations who are leading and pushing for change around women's sports, for gender equity within women's sports. And we're giving a platform here to talk about that, and also giving you as viewers a chance to connect and ask your questions live with these industry experts and thought leaders. And before we get started, a quick recap of what the Fan Project is. The Fan Project is an initiative dedicated to driving investment and coverage of women's sports by collecting and analyzing data straight from fans. We'll be writing a report based on this data and publishing it publicly with the aim of convincing decision makers to invest in sports and to recognize the untapped business potential of women's sports. How does it exactly work? Let me show you. You come to the fanproject.co and you share your social data. These are your Facebook or your Twitter archive. Don't worry, we tell you how to do it. Our system anonymously analyzes all of that data. Our analysts write a report on the power and the potential and the fan fervor behind women's sports. We push that report to the people who are going to make a difference: network executives in charge of buying broadcast rights, brand CEOs in charge of sponsorship dollars, and sports sponsors and investors responsible for investing in women's leagues, teams, and athletes to prove the case and the power of women's sports. So make sure, if you haven't yet, check it out. Fanproject.co. And with that, I am super excited to introduce our guest today. So let me get rid of this. And we have two guests today. We have one on stage right now, one having a little bit of technical difficulty, so she's going to join us in a little bit. But let me go ahead and introduce Hayley Rosen. Hayley is the CEO and founder of Just Women's Sports, a media and content company that believes female athletes can fill more than just the occasional feature. They can be the entire publication. Just Women's Sports is the premier destination for all things women's sports and is backed by all-star athletes, including Hillary Knight, Kerry Walsh Jennings, and Kelly O'Hara. Hayley Rosen received a BA and MA from Stanford University, where she also played as a midfielder for the Cardinals soccer team. After a brief professional soccer career in both the US and abroad, Hayley returned to the Bay Area, where she first worked in tech before founding Just Women's Sports. So Hayley, we are so thrilled. Thank you for your time. We're super psyched to have you with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and hosting our discussion today is Megan Perry, a sports management veteran with 10 plus years of industry experience working for the WNBA President's Office, CBS Sports, and today she serves as the Executive Director of Women's Initiatives for the Sports Innovation Lab. Prior to joining the lab team, Megan spent 8 years at the WNBA as part of the basketball operations and player relations team, managing player operations for league events like the draft, All-Star Game, Inspiring Women. She also worked to develop programming to assist players on and off the court with their initiatives and community engagement efforts. Beyond her time at the WNBA, she's remained engaged across the sports landscape, covering women's college basketball. You've probably seen her on TV before on CBS Sports. And she is totally tireless in her efforts to champion and advance women across sports, media, entertainment, and technology as a member of the Sports Innovation Lab team. So Megan, super psyched. And hopefully in a little bit, we will bring Olga on stage with us, Olga Harvey, who brings 20 years of business experience and boundless passion for sports to her role as Chief Strategy and Impact Officer at the Women's Sports Foundation. She leads research, advocacy, and all programmatic initiatives of the foundation. Olga's entry into the sports and philanthropy field was first at the New York Junior Tennis and Learning Organization. And prior to that, she was executive director at Damon Worldwide, a global retail brand development firm. Olga's a native of Moscow, Russia. She received a business degree from Cornell University while playing Division I tennis. Olga was the team captain and holds a 21-0 record in Ivy League singles play. She was two-time Ivy League Player of the Year and inducted into the Cornell Athletic Hall of Fame. She's still an avid tennis player. She serves as vice president of the USTA Board of Directors. And in 2019, she was recognized as one of the notable women in business in sports by Crane. So very excited to have Olga joining us, and we're going to get her up here in a little while as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Megan and Hayley to get us started today. Nope.
Megan, you're muted.
Here, yeah.
We'll try that again. Okay. Great. Thank you. What I was going to say is thank you, Gina, for those rock star introductions. Hopeful that, as Gina said, that Olga will be able to join us. But for now, Hayley, let's dig in. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to talk with you and to share more about just women's sports. So let's just start off. You've made such an impressive jump from being a professional athlete to a business entrepreneur with the founding of Just Women's Sports. So I was wondering if you would share with us a bit talk about your journey and when you saw the market opportunity for a platform such as Just Women's Sports.
Yeah. I mean, my story really starts and ends with women's sports. I, as said in my background, I played soccer in college and then I played professionally for a little bit in the US and abroad. And that's really the experience that showed me everything that was happening in women's sports and the opportunity. I was a leaguer, so I bounced around. I was on a bunch of different teams in different leagues, and every team, every league, we were selling out stadiums, attendance was up, viewership was up. And this was before the 2019 World Cup. So this was pre when we were kind of all starting to see this. It was really just getting going. And for me, my career was cut short because of injuries. I came back to the Bay Area, I was working in tech. And for me, that was the first time I felt the lack of sports coverage. It was the first time I was on the outside looking in. I didn't just know what was going on. And, it's everything we know now, right? It's 4% of sports coverage is dedicated to women's sports, 1.5% of broadcast rights. Then on the other side, I felt like a lot of what I was seeing just didn't feel like the world I knew or wasn't hitting on the things that I cared about. And I just kept being like, where are the sports? Where are the highlights and the stats and who's at the top of the table and got traded? Like, where is this? I know people are interested. I know people are showing up. Like, this is a huge opportunity just hiding in plain sight. And so we just kind of went for it, took the leap.
Awesome. Gosh, I love the energy that you have with us, and I can't wait to dig in, find out more. We have to pause and say, hello, Olga. Thanks for joining the stage. We're so happy that you made it, and we're so sorry for the technical difficulties. But we were just taking a moment, and I wanted to kind of pause and back up, I guess, and ask you first. My first question to you is: tell us a little bit more about your role with the Women's Sports Foundation as Chief Strategy and Impact Officer, with emphasis on impact, because I know it's a lot more than just talking the talk. You guys are really about making change. So tell us a little bit more about your role.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say I'm living the mission, and I will quote Billie Jean King, that champions it just, because I had to switch computers twice to be here with everyone, but I'm excited to be on. And yes, it's a bit of a mouthful title, but really everyone at the foundation is focused on impact. And, I'm fortunate to have this role where I oversee our research, advocacy, and community impact efforts that include both the grassroots youth engagement aspect and the elite athlete leadership work. And at the end of the day, for the last 50 years, we have been true to the mission of making an impact for girls and women and allowing them to reach their potential, whatever it is, in sport, but beyond as well, right? And fighting for equity. And yes, Megan, to your point, we do try to walk the walk every single day. And as I think about impact, it's I kind of look at it in two ways. One is you can make an impact for one girl or for one athlete. And we do that, for example, through grants. And I always bring the example of Michelle Kwan, who received a travel and training grant when she was 12 from the foundation and was able to continue skating and has gone on to become one of the most decorated figure skaters in not just US, but globally, right? But there's so many girls that, I feel like we're impacting every single day, but it does add up to hundreds and thousands. And since the Title IX was passed, there's more than 3 million girls play high school sports every single year. So I would say that that's kind of in the larger scale, sort of to put the impact into some bigger numbers. So very fortunate. And again, thank you for having me.
Oh, so we're so happy to have you. And so let's keep diving in, ladies. I guess question right back to you, Olga. What are some of the bigger initiatives that you're working on today? And I'm familiar, and I'm sure some of our audience is familiar with the Equity Project, but I'd love to hear more about, one, tell us more about it, and then how can we all support it?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, the Equity Project is sort of a new initiative that frames the work that's been going on for many, many years, but we have launched it last year as we did a research report that showed that on the cusp of 50th anniversary of Title IX, we've made so much progress on one hand, right? And it feels good that, access to sports is not viewed like, something that, you sort of have to convince people about. I think everyone realizes the power of sports for girls and women and really for every human being, but at the same time, we're still in some ways chasing equity in every level of, metrics, right? If you think about them, from access to sports to media coverage to pay equity and sponsorship dollars, right? To Title IX compliance. So we have created this project to say, how do we all row in the same direction and collectively push for more impact quickly, so we don't have to wait another 50 years to, reach the next milestone. How can we accelerate the pace of change together? So that's really, and how can an individual help? We actually encourage everyone to take the Equity Pledge. You can do it by going to our website and committing to equity kind of personally, right? But as organizations, there's so many ways. And I know Sports Innovation Lab is one of those organizations that's doing so much. And the FAN Project is just one of those initiatives that, to me, is the step in the right direction.
Love to hear that. We are collectively working to advance this thing and get it going in the right direction. And Hayley, I actually want to tag you back into the conversation because Just Women's Sports, you guys are doing a lot around helping solve some of the biggest issues around women's sports. I mean, you're creating solutions for like simple things like where to watch, communicating that to audiences. It might sound simple and basic, but I think that's, areas where people are still struggling across the global women's sports landscape. So what are some of your ambitions as it relates to Just Women's Sports, and what additional problems are you working to solve, and where is Just Women's Sports headed?
Yeah, big questions.
We go big here. We go big.
As like Olga pointed out, there's so much to be done here. For us and for me, I think a really critical piece of this is media coverage. And you hear this all the time. You can't see it, you can't be it. And like every person I know that's played sports at a high level has someone that was their inspiration. For me, it was Mia Hamm. I had her Barbie doll, I had her poster, I had her book. I wanted to be Mia Hamm, right? And, we hear it on the Just Women's Sports podcast too, like from, Chloe Kim to Candace Parker, there was always someone, I saw her do this and it made me think I could do that. And so for us, we want to solve that 4%. And there's a lot happening in the space and there's more media companies coming up. For us, we really want to solve women's sports news. That's where we want to live. And so for us, our long-term vision is to be that one-stop shop for women's sports, to be sort of the ESPN on the women's side. And what that means is, we want to push on our digital channels. We want to expand our audio network. We'd like to get into premium content. And ultimately, we want the games. We want you to go to justwomensports.com, put in your name, put in your password, and unlock this whole world of women's sports. And we believe that if we can build this ecosystem and get people showing up and tuning in, all this stuff around robust agencies or fantasy or betting, we can go build all that on the women's side and get these women paid, So that's really where we're hoping to go. That's obviously a very large vision and there's a lot to be done, like this complete white space right now. So for us, it's about taking the steps. And this next phase for us is about media coverage. We want to grow our current channels and our website, our newsletter, our social handles, and we want to expand our, really podcast offerings is really where we're focused right now. But it's just growth. It's just get it in front of people, because we've just seen if we get this in front of people, women's sports is a good product. It's had a marketing problem for a long time. So let's just get it out there. And that's what we view our role as.
There's so much that I want to dig into with that. And so I have to say, one, what we're so excited about, and the reason we are all here is because both Just Women's Sports and the Women's Sports Foundation, you guys have been awesome partners of the Fan Project, because we see the Fan Project as a collective effort to tell people how and where to invest their money across the women's sports landscape through fan data, letting the fans tell us how they're engaging, right? And then saying, hey guys, put your money where your mouth is. And so for both of you, I guess I saw a question earlier in the chat, and I want to make sure I direct it or say it's from the right person. I forget. But the question generally was to both of you. I'll start with you, Olga. How do you think, what can we do to apply more pressure, to create more change? What are some of the steps that we should be taking most immediately as the global community?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a catch-22 issue, right? If you're going to wait to invest because you want to prove out that there's demand, you're not creating the demand, and if you're sort of too bold and you're not sure if the fans are going to be there. So everyone historically has treated women's sports as that not sure proposition, but we have had so many success stories, and I'm just going to mention a couple just during the pandemic where, probably a lot of people have heard that National Women's Soccer League, right, viewership increased almost 500%. These are unheard of numbers. The WNBA draft, right, 120+% from the previous year. And of course, ESPN is now putting it on, the main network, and, the viewers are there, right? We know it. Obviously, you can, go back to sort of when, many people probably don't remember when WTA was just starting, and it wasn't even called WTA, right? No one knew what was going to happen, and now no one questions the fact that, women's tennis is one of the top sporting events, and the sponsorships are amazing. So we have, I think we have proven that there is interest, there is great product. We just have to continue working with, sponsors to really say, it can be an afterthought. Really, let's work on sponsorship deals that, are focused on women's sports as a primary, not as sort of a throw-in deal along, WNBA along with the NBA package, and really approaching it as an asset it deserves to be. And I will kind of leave you with a, quick sort of quote here from Alexis Ohanian, who I just love. He said, "Save the receipts. Let's talk in 10 years when, Angel City was founded," because, the marketing was there, and fans are loving it. And I think we need to approach every single women's sports product as that treasured asset that, sponsors should be fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're going to do with the Fan Project. Understanding, like you both have articulated, we know the demand is there. There's latent demand, but it's more about, okay, well, now what do we do with that? How do we empower people sitting in boardrooms and decision makers to say, not only is it a good thing to do, but this is a savvy business decision. Here's the data, and the Fan Project is empowering us through fan power, through this data, to be able to help create that change. So I will make a plug and say, if you haven't taken part in the Fan Project, get busy, because that is actually how you can help us move the needle forward. That's how you can take action. But I want to kick back to you, Hayley, for a bit. I'm going to ask you, what role does data and feedback play in helping shape your content? Because you're very much so engaged and trying to help inform the audience and engage them in new and different and exciting ways across the digital space. And you mentioned podcasting. So talk to us about what role data plays into that.
This is one of the main reasons I'm so excited about what you're doing. There just hasn't been enough data in the space. And I can tell you, we're venture backed, and I had to hunt. We spent we have documents and documents of research that we've done on our own, a lot pulled from the Women's Sports Foundation, but just trying to make the case for women's sports. And that's really changing. We haven't really had to do that as much lately, but that was so much of my early conversations of this is a space that's growing. Here are numbers, there's more people playing. Here are numbers, here's what sponsorship could look like. And we had to build a lot of this 6 months ago. And so I think what's really exciting about what you're doing is like, just being able to be like, here are the receipts, right? Like, here's the facts here, and like the NWSL and the WNBA having such growth over the summer is like, it's great. Like, it's great, right? Like, we've been trying to say it's happening, it's growing. We're seeing this post-Title IX generation, like, get in now, like, let's get going. And now we're starting to see the numbers to back it up. And I'll tell you too, like, something that we've leaned on for sponsorships is the majority of our audience today is millennial women, which I think makes a ton of sense, right? Like, we always say it's a post-Title IX generation. They grew up playing sports at a low, medium, or high level, and now they want to watch the game they know, or they want to hear about the game that they know. And so that's the core of our demographic. We have ambitions, we don't say we're by women for women, similar to men's sports. Like, this is sports, so it's for everyone, right? But we're definitely built around that demographic, which is really appealing for advertisers. Like, advertisers are trying to hit this demographic of like young, active women. Like, oh my God, start sponsoring women's sports. What are you doing? And, we're seeing that. And like, Heineken came on for season 2 of our podcast. They're about to come on for season 3. I probably shouldn't have just said that, but and we're building more brands because they're seeing the return, because women's sports is good business. And what's so exciting is, we're starting to get the data to back that up. And that's really, really powerful, because you can't argue the numbers.
Oh, for sure. Ladies, we have listen, this chat window is popping. There's great questions, and I'm going to try to get to a couple of them because we are going to run out of time. It goes so quickly. We have a great question from Aaron. Aaron asked, can we support, or I guess she said, can we support women entrepreneurs who want to start new sport gear brands? And so that we can work with them, so we can work with women to make women's knits, uniforms, etc. I guess the question in that is like, how can we support, female entrepreneurs in the space that are trying to use, I guess, the specific branding and merchandise route to support women in sports? Do either of you have any commentary on that?
Well, what I would say is that there are so many ways to support women entrepreneurs. Apparel is certainly one of very great directions, and I'm going to mention give a shout out to one, for example, PSK Collective, which happens to be a product of the current Women's Sports Foundation president, Phaedra Knight, who is a Hall of Fame rugby player who has set forth to create not only comfortable clothing for athletic women, but with a mission. And her athletic gear is all about equity. And that's just sort of, an example of someone, if you want to, support her or others. There's so many out there. And I guess if you're not sure how, reach out to us. I'm sure Hayley will have some other, ideas of, organizations that you could support. But I think in general, women entrepreneurship is such a, powerful concept, and 94% of women in leadership positions have played sports. So likely it's probably going to be a former or a current athlete you're going to be supporting.
Yeah. Oh, I have to say, for both of you, I mean, I think all three of us are former college athletes. I didn't go the professional route, but Olga, shout out to you and the Big Red. We're from the Cornell family, and Hayley, what you did at Stanford is amazing. But I think that something I'm excited about seeing, the data will tell us. We know that women engage in sports. We know, I guess what we're trying to prove also is that there is a correlation between women that play, success of women in leadership positions, and then trying to understand, how does that transcend, or how does that connect to watching and all the numbers that these sponsors are caring about? And so I guess question for you, Hayley, I saw pop up in the chat is why do you think that podcasting is the appropriate medium to kind of tackle, to engage the women's sports community? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. Because our audience is really built around millennials and millennial women, they're listening to audio. So we're just meeting them where they're at. And that's another reason why we prioritize newsletters as well. We know it's very popular with that demographic. So for us, it's we want to make women's sports easy. You know what I mean? Just get you hooked in, and then maybe you like the podcast and you follow us here and you read our articles, then you watch a WNBA game. We're just trying to build that flywheel.
Got you. I'm going to respect everyone's time and knowing that we have to wrap quickly. So I'm going to throw this question to you, Olga, and to you, Hayley. The Fan Project, we've been talking a lot around the she did that moment, meaning identify a woman in sports or an athlete. And Hayley, you shared this a little bit before, but maybe we can circle back. Identify a woman in sports that, inspired you, that pushed you. What was the moment you came across and seeing a woman in sport and you were like, dang, like she did that. And it drew you back in to want to be a part of their journey, to want to see more coverage of them. I'm curious to know, I guess, Olga, for you first, what's your she did that moment? Can you share that with us?
You mentioned that question before, and I was, struggling to come up with one because I sort of have different examples from different phases of my life. When I was growing up in Russia, it was the figure skaters, no doubt, right, watching the Olympics. But I'm going to give an example of someone who continues to inspire me every day, and it ties to sort of lack of coverage. So Elena Nichols, who is, a great friend of mine and multi-sport Paralympian, she made history in 2010 when she won gold medal at the Winter Vancouver Olympics, having won the Summer Olympics 2 years before. The first person to have gold in the winter and the summer, and no one has seen it. It was not covered. And I just encourage everyone listening, if you don't know Elena and her story, check it out, because since then he has become a mom. She's been a president of the Women's Sports Foundation, an entrepreneur, and doing it all. And just really, tells you that, accessibility is really not an issue. I mean, if you believe you can do it, you will. And Elena is one of those who inspires me every day.
Thanks, Olga. And I know, Hayley, you shared me a hand. You kind of stole the last question. But is there anything else you want to add to that? I know that maybe there's more, but I want to give you the opportunity to expand on that if you want to.
I feel similar to Olga. Like, there's no way I could just pick one. As a kid, it was Mia Hamm. Like, she got me into soccer. She cut around defenders like no one I've ever seen and passed the ball in the goal, which is like, that's a skill to pass it in the goal, But, like, these women that are playing, like, this is why we do what we do. They're dope. They ball out. But there's every day there's a she did that moment. Like, absolutely. And that's why we're trying to cover that. You know what I mean? Because if you don't see it, you don't know it. And so, I definitely don't have one.
Gotcha. There's many, and to your point, there should be men. There are many, and we have to keep elevating those and shouting to the world about how great the women's sports community is. So with that, we've reached our 3 o'clock on the East Coast, time, and so I'm going to have to close the conversation. But ladies, I want to say thank you so much for joining us for the Fan Project Live. Olga and Hayley, keep pushing forward. We want to continue to support the work that you're doing, and we encourage everyone that joined us to continue to reach out, see what Olga and see what Hayley are up to, follow them, and join the Fan Project so we can collectively continue to push this conversation forward and take action. Do more than just talk the talk. We want to walk the walk too. So thanks for joining, and we're excited to continue the conversation with you both later.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Okay. Bye, ladies.